Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Silverspook, and this is the Silverspook live stream. And today we'll be talking about the Empire of Glass, shattered domes, fractured screens, and a broken matrix of control, and the fallout of the so-called 12 Days War. And what does that mean? Is it the 12 Days War? Is that actually accurate? And much more. So, anyways, I just want to comment on. Sorry, I'm gonna try to up this microphone level. Sorry, it's a bit suddenly jumped up, but my computer automatically resets the microphone levels. Every time I start the computer, every time I start the OBS. Anyway, so Empire of Glass. What is the what do I mean by that? There's several different meanings. Obviously, one, there's various domes. I'm going to try to not say too specific words so that people will find this stream ever. But you know what we're talking about. Everybody knows what we're talking about, I think, in this case. There's certain domes. There's actually a dome that Donald Trump would like to build. Based upon the performance of the recent dome that was put to the test by hundreds upon hundreds of missiles and drones, it did not do very well. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure what, depending on which screen, depending on which matrix of screens you're looking at. Depending on what matrix of control, that's the other kind of metaphor I was kind of going for here. You may deduce different levels of success, right? So depending on which channels you listen to, depending on what voices your ears are hearing, depending on what what are you doing? Sorry. Depending on what what media sources you're tuned into, right? Depending on what websites, platforms you're on, depending on what stacks are stacking the deck for or against a particular side, and there are sides in this. Sorry, I'm trying to set my chat up. Depending on where you're listening to. Gil says Golden Dome of inadequacy. Yeah, depending on what side you're listening to, right, you're gonna hear different stories. That's part of the Empire of Glass, right? So in the sense of, obviously there is a military defensive shield. Some of these are, there's a Goliath sling. There's David's pea shooter. There's the THAAD, or should we say the has-been THAAD system. There's the THAAD. There is the so-called there's the rusty garbage dome. And there's several other. Actually, there was French, there was Jordanian interceptors, there was the Collective West, plus all their imperial allies, puppets in the region. I can't even name them. I can't remember them all. UK was part of this. They were all part of. It wasn't just a tiny little bastion of so-called Western freedom and democracy, like the so-called non-slave having Greeks in 300, right, standing off against the evil Persian Empire. It was not just a tiny little settler colony in West Asia, right? It was the entire might of the Collective West, as it always is, hiding behind the matrix of the one thing they are pretty good at is the narrative construction. That's the matrix, right? The narrative war, right? Oh, we are just defending ourselves, or we are just not doing anything. It's just a tiny little speck of land, right, east of the Mediterranean, that it's just trying to defend itself. And we're just, what should we do to help this precious little, tiny little Western bastion of freedom, human rights, and democracy defend itself? What should we do? Let's do everything we can to help it. Right. And so that's the empire has always been made of glass in that sense. Even going back to the time of the Greeks, the times of Alexander, the Spartans had slaves. I recently was watching an Iranian's videos, like actual scholar was like, Spartans, the Greeks, the West had slaves. There's a 7-to-1 slaves to Spartan ratio, and they would regularly, because of fear of slave uprisings, they would regularly declare war on their own slaves, and they were free to massacre them at will with no repercussions. It's basically like one day a year, or like, one month a year, mass purge, right? But it was slave owners of the West massacring. And this is also how European feudal society was also maintained for centuries, right? If the serf, the class that does the work, actual work, under terrible conditions, threatens to rise up, there would be massacres of the European feudal lords using their knights, right, against the working class, right? And of course today we have, in the 500 years of colonialism, you have massacres of Africans, right? If you don't bring enough gold to Columbus, he pours boiling soap down your indigenous Native American throat. The Congolese will have their hands cut off. If there's uprisings anywhere in Africa, there'll be massacres. In the island of Taiwan, there were uprisings of the Chinese and on that island, and they were put down with massacres because the Dutch needed their land of milk and honey. That was 300 years ago, 400 years ago. So that right. So that's not freedom, and that's not democracy. That's not human rights. That's tyranny and slavery and inequality, racism, and all the nasty, horrible things. And a tiny oligarchy of particular group of people, usually of a particular skin color and of particular heritage, that dominate everything for thousands of years. And that narrative is part of the glass, right? That is only starting to crack now. Like in the part of the problem is that when you have people that are very good at telling stories in the history books that they write for thousands of years. Now, of course, there are other books. There are non-Western books. There have been Chinese books. There have been Persian books. There have been Iranian books. There have been books in Africa. They're writing around the world. A lot of that was destroyed in the last 500 years or hidden from view. So a lot of it has to be like recollected. But that the Empire of Glass is a 2,000 year. It is a 2,000 year. A 2,000 year mirage. Right? It spans the globe and it spans history. That says, we the peoples of the free world, the rules-based order, right? The civilized Europeans of the last 500 years. We the inheritors of the classical great civilized nations, Greece and Rome, right? We carry the mantle forward through the Renaissance, etc. This is the whole narrative, right? This is what everybody has to learn in school. In South Korea or in Germany or in a poor farming town in Missouri or in a Japanese military base or in Tokyo, everybody has to learn this. That this is reality. Or in India, right? And you can join that by manufacturing semiconductors for us and doing all of our science, tech, engineering, and mathematics for us that we don't do because we don't have high quality education systems. We only have mass narrative spinning systems, historically and in the current news cycle. You know what I'm trying to say? So I mean that's a whole other layer of this, which is that the myth of the great moral Western multiple millennia story, because it was the Persians that was who they were standing off against. Cyrus the Great, and then in 300 in the era of manufacturing, 7 wars, 7 years, when Colin Powell was shaking his yellow cake to bring all of the jingoism to the yard, in the United States, and manufacture consent for the Iraq War. On the behalf of the U.S. empire that requires a 7 million person forward operating base in the Levant, and the collective Western imperial structure, not the other way around, which a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion there intentionally. That's part of the narrative smokescreen, right? And that movie 300, right? If you remember, it's a Xerxes and a Darius, and it's these evil hordes of all these different people. There are some that look a little bit more Asian. They look a little bit. Some of them look like they're wearing kind of samurai masks, which is just Zack Snyder's hyperactive imagination that, I won't talk too much about Zack Snyder in this stream because, yeah. But the worst thing ever would be a 7-foot tall brown queer man. That's Zack Snyder said that's the most terrifying thing to him, and so that's why he made Xerxes like a pituitary gland malfunctioning giant mega drag queen from Iran. That was the most terrifying thing you could possibly imagine, and happy Pride, Zach. Anyways, so but also it's like, but the thing is like the Iranian civilization, which is the Persian civilization, which it is all a continuous part of, did have a diverse had a diverse array of peoples with different languages. They had different cultures in the Persian Empire. The word empire is we don't have really good words that differentiate this in the English language, but the Persian civilization was made up of many different languages, ethnicities, which were allowed, and also religions. There have been and there are Jewish people historically and to this day who fought against Western imperialists, including their own bastion of the only safe place for the Jewish people, which it isn't. It's actually one of the core places of anti-Semitism, but the West backs it, obviously, as that, and it lies, as it always has, 2,000 years ago or now. And there are, and in the 20th century, against imperialism coming out of the West, there have been Jewish fighters from Iran, and now there are still Jewish fighters from Iran. I was just watching a video of a Hanukkah celebrations in Tehran. There's many synagogues, and they're able to today and historically 2,500 years ago, various faiths had their mosques, they had their synagogues, they had their Christian churches, and they still have their Christian churches in Iran, and it was the West that insisted on one single brutal culture, right, and obliteration of enemy or anyone deemed different, and not just obliteration, also enslavement. It was Afro-Asiatics that served as the Greek slaves, right? You can think of it as the Greeks. They say that Herodotus was the father of Western so-called history. I call this propaganda, mass distributed, long-winded propaganda. It's not really history a lot of the time, almost all the time, with half-truths and lies filling most of it to justify more injustice, like the slavery that the Greeks had, and also abuse of women who were considered second-class citizens. just as a counterexample, in Persia, like women historically and to this day have had and still have very important places. And in fact, one of the core differences between the East and the West is that the finances for millennia, also in China, are the women control the economic reality, like the domestic affairs and where the money goes in both China and Persia for millennia. Is historically been controlled by women, whereas in the West, in the Greek and Roman and every following civilization, the British, the Dutch, the Americans, the men control the finances. The men control, and by extension, a lot of the power, which tends towards a capitalistic system, which it did in the Greek. The Greeks had, risky loans on massive amounts of internationally traded commodities, just like the United States and the British rigged LIBOR in the United States had the no income, no jobs, no assets loans at a subprime mortgage crisis. And a part of that is because the men controlling the finances all across Western history and taking extreme risks, very toxic, a kind of toxic locker room banker class, corporate class, who seek domination, and military domination increases your wealth, right? Lies and brainwashing people into taking on massive amounts of student debt, credit card debt, getting entire countries wrapped up in, sovereign debt that then defaults, and you can control entire economies, right? And it was actually the Eastern cultures had jubilee every 50 years. Right? When you talk about capitalism, you can't really talk about capitalism without talking about multiple millennia of West versus East ways of dealing with really, really core affairs, like the home economic situation, right? Which also echoes out into the civilizational, society-wide economics, and those differences between Persia. This is what the Greeks went to war. They went to war with the East over. Right, so it was that one of the things was that they would forgive every 50 years the Persian leaders. What they were called despots, they were called tyrants, right, by the Greeks, by the West. These people, they're despotic, these tyrants, these horrible Xerxes and the Cyruses. They don't have the freedom to maximize their individual pursuit of happiness. The Persian men don't have the freedom to have slaves, to kill their slaves when they feel like it, to keep them oppressed, to exploit their labor for the personal, selfish benefit of an oligarchy of Greek or American under Jefferson, or British lords and ladies and etc. The freedom in the West is a freedom for a handful of empowered men to control super oppressed labor under threat of massacre, enslavement. Nowadays they call them police, militarized police, or the various levels of enslavement: chattel slavery, black slavery, under the table immigrant labor under threat of mass deportation, which they're obviously doing now. It's hurting the U.S. economy, right? When you just get rid of all of your slave labor that is your current hyper exploited Greek labor. But freedom in the West, right? This is part of the glass house, right? They're very good at this mind contortion, disinformation, right? It's just we need the Persians. The Greeks claim the Persians need they're totalitarian, their dictatorship, they are despotic, right? They are tyrants because the Persians don't allow their men to have slaves. Hyper oppressed labor. The women are not in the proper place, as in Greek society, where women's job is to be subservient to the man. So the men are not free to philosophize, right? The Persian men were not free to philosophize. That was, they didn't have Sam Altman and Elon Musk. Sam Altmans and Elon Musks were not free to podcast. It's another way to think about that. That's what philosophy is in the West. Is empowered, mediocre abusers talking to each other about how to keep their system going. Like getting everybody wrapped up in NVIDIA stonks today. That's what it amounts to, right? Sam Altman, Elon, and Peter Thiel were the Aristotle and the Socrates and the Plato of their time. They are the Socrates and Plato of our time now, right? Talking to each other, broadcasting to all their fellow men with the information that they control through the screens. No, in the time they didn't have screens. They didn't have iPhones and Samsung Galaxies and Twitter and Google and Microsoft and YouTube that they own. But they were talking to all the other men and making sure everybody and the rest of the society we have to make sure that we have the freedom to pursue our happiness, right? Today they have millions of workers, right? And they have cobalt mines globally. And they have a global Greek society today. They have a global Western society, right? You don't just have a handful of Afro-Hellenic, Afro-Asiatic slaves. You don't have Persian slaves tending to your Athenian grapevines and your olives agriculture. Now you have billions of Africans getting resources for you in the global Greek. And you can have your toga party and talk about classical civilization with Jordan Peterson and all your podcast bros, right? The modern Aristotles, they're doing the same thing that they have always been doing in that sense on the 8 billion person scale instead of, a few million 2,000 years ago. But it's actually the same thing. Where are the women today, by the way? How is women's rights going? How is the abortion rights? How women's economic inequality? Women's pay is still unequal, despite them doing more and more and more of the actual work. And the Western man is just podcasting harder, talking to each other about how if we can get rid of the DEI, if we can get rid of the feminism, then things will be great like they were in the 1950s or in 200 BC, or 100, in 0 AD in Rome, right? How often do you think about Rome, by the way? So, you can see that is the trajectory of the history of Western civilized, the Western Empire of Glass is a matrix of disinformation. I've seen a lot of tweets, people saying like, we just got to stop these guys having microphones and talking to each other. That would limit their freedom of speech. And that's not freedom. You have to let them talk to each other and talk to everyone so that everyone can know the truth, which is that the West and the United States is the greatest. The United States, and before that, the British and the French Empire, and before them, the Greek and the Roman empires. These were the greatest places and the most moral places to ever have lived. And you need to let them keep speaking and talking. And that is the only, the freedom of navigation in the Yellow River is the most important thing. And the freedom of speech of the podcast rose is the most important thing in the world ever, historically. And the freedom to have slaves, oppressed workers under capitalism, under the table illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants that we can pay $3 an hour under the threat of calling ICE. And we need billions of people in Africa, Asia, and Latin America harvesting our resources for basically starvation wages. We need the freedom to exploit 7.8 billion people. And have in-house professional slave cooker, cleaner, and sex slaves called women. And if you don't give us that freedom, we'll kill you all. We'll talk really hard and brainwash lots of other people like us, and they'll be called conservatives or our brainwashed armies, and then they'll kill you all if you ever stop doing what we say. That is the Empire of Glass, and that's also what is being shattered. It can only be shattered. In some places, it will take any and all means necessary to deal with that. It can be because if it grows, if that empire of glass, the empire of mirrors, right, like a funhouse mirror, reflecting reality through the eyes of the Aristotle, reflecting the eyes through the eyes of the philosopher king, or the techno king, like Peter Thiel, the neo-feudal techno king, who says monarchy is good and there should be no competition in semiconductors, in information technology, in search. Google should have no competition, right? We need a return of kings. The spoketh Sargon of Akkad, the wannabe, the wannabe ancient. Sargon of Akkad and Mencius Moldbug are the worm tongues in the ears of the modern neo-feudal techno kings like Thiel and Musk, and they wish they were anything like the Persian. Sometimes they model themselves on the Persian leaders, but they're nothing like them. I forget where the actual Sargon of Akkad was, but anyway, long story short, so this idea of that on a grand scheme, right? That's what I mean by the Empire of Glass. It's the empire of stories. It's the empire of Hollywood, right? Which was written, whose documents were designed by the great ally to the Western man that defected from the East. Her name was Ayn Rand, who wrote the Motion Picture Association for the Preservation of American Values, the screen guide to preserve those American values, right? As an anti-communist, pro-capitalist, the Ayn Rand of such great works that are required summer reading for the West, by the way. They're required summer reading in many Western high schools, and Western vassalized and imperially controlled high schools, such as the Fountainhead, such as Atlas Shrugged, right? And so Hollywood is part, obviously, that's in the literal sense, the TV screens, right? The celluloid upon which the cowboy movies were made, right? In which was obviously anti-indigenous and was about manufacturing consent with the mass six-shooter unaliving of the red man, was a part of a translation into we must eliminate the red communist man in Vietnam, Korea, China, nuclear war in China, if we need to. 60 times almost enacted. The red man in Cambodia, in Laos, and we must kill millions upon millions of them, right? Just as we built this nation, right, from the sweat of our saddles that we sat on. Actually, most of the real actual cowboys that did the ranching were black or brown, but that's part of the Empire of Glass, right? It's about through the screens, through the cinema, through narrative. I mean, when the Eastern technology of paper was stolen by Europeans, the West, right? The Chinese and the Koreans had it long before Gutenberg. Oh, then they figured out, we could really use this and these technologies to rapidly accelerate. We could have the New York Times making everybody believe that we need to go to war in Iraq and spend billions and billions and billions of dollars and kill millions of people around the world for all these imperialist wars, right? Or we could write anything we want and we could spread it at mass rate, right? So as soon as the East creates some kind of technology, the West will quickly take it and turn it into a weapon of mass control and of mind warping and add it into the Empire of Glass. Gunpowder is also invented in China. It was for 1,000 years. It was a celebratory gold and yellow and silver and marigold and blue sparkling showers of fireworks. Just like the Chinese have the greatest 1 million+ synchronized drone shows that can craft entire like three-dimensional mile-wide dragons in the sky, right? With the most advanced technology ever. And of course the US is trying to get those drones. They're literally buying them and smuggling them into the imperialist wars because they can't make their own because they suck, as the West always has. At actually inventing and creating technologies. They're very good at lying. They're very good at doing horrific things and calling themselves free, right? Full of freedom and human rights and democracy, demos, right? They're really good at writing stories about themselves. They're very good at that. Not good at actually winning wars. How many wars has the U.S. won? Did the Greeks win the war against Persia? Like, did the Romans defeat the Persians? Most of what they did actually was gather slaves and terrorize mass numbers of people, just as NATO does, just as the British and the French Empire did. But when it comes to a real stand-up war against a real army, all of the Western militaries have been paper tigers, or should we say glass houses. There have been glass palaces, like they're domes. And so coming back to the moment, that's kind of what's happened, right? Is that the empire of the multi-thousand year of narrative glass in history books is shattering. as people are seeing that, how many times has Satan, that Yahoo milk Satan Yahoo, that Yahoo who is not indigenous to West Asia. He's from Philadelphia. He's American. Just like everyone in that 7 million person settler colony. How many times has he said, we got, the most dangerous country in the world, Iran, is about to get the most dangerous weapon? Many, many times. And I think it was a George W. Bush line that he just repeated this last month, right before all this so-called 12 days war launched. He said it again, and it's been non-stop blasted. Rumsfeld said we gotta start 7 wars in 7 years, and we need Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and one of the number one targets was, and it's always been Iran. Why has it always been Iran? Well, it's always been Iran. It's not been Iran for the last 50 years. Not since the swallow of the Shah, not since the Iranian Revolution. Way before that. Iran and Persia as a whole, which is essentially the same thing in terms of geographically. So actually, the borders of it have not changed very much when you look at a map for millennia upon millennia. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the Levant region has shifted a lot on Western maps. Now, of course, there are documentations of Palestine going back millennia also. But Iran has stood firm. It's for many reasons, which I don't have time to go into, but and they are right. They have been the number one target, the bane of a lot of the West for over 2,000 years. Right? There are American hack filmmakers that ruined Superman and Batman that make movies about Iran today, 2,000 years ago, right? To justify war against them now. They've always been a problem for the West, and I think a lot of it has to go back. A lot of it goes back to basic. There's I can't sum up all of that in one sentence, obviously, but there are basic differences in how the wealth is transferred, the way that you deal with differences in culture and language, the way that you deal with money, right? It's not even the wealth actually is preserved. Is that a lot of Central Asia and also China, there's the savings and the gold, right, is part that it's often in their headdresses, not headdresses, but their head coverings and on their body a lot of the time, on the women. And a part of that is there's a history of the wealth being controlled and again, for domestic use by the women in the household. And the women that they are concerned generally on the feminine energy is more concerned with preservation of life and making sure that the children are taken care of and that the community and the family has what it needs, not so much with individual personal pursuit of gain and military pursuit and conquest and self-aggrandization, right? That is more masculine energy. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a third gender Mahu Native Hawaiian person, but I mean that's part of that's part of what toxic masculinity comes from. It transcends cultures. It's not to say that everyone who is male is going to become Peter Thiel inevitably, if given enough time and given enough access to money or something. But that's a tendency. That's a real tendency, and that's dangerous in any kind of human civilization and any kind of construct of the cultures that we exist in. I mean, because humanity underlies all this culture. The basic, there's an animal there, and you can have rules and you can have regulations, but there are certain tendencies that if you're not that if too many guys get into a room, they're going to start podcasting about making crypto coins. You know what I'm saying? If you get too many Aristotles together in a room, too many dudes together, they're gonna start talking to each other about like, how can we, like, we want conquest, like, you know, I want glory, you know, I want power, like, and not too much care about what is the future for the children. Children, you know, I'm not saying that everybody's like a terrible father, but like, they're like, if you've ever been in a locker room, I've been in a football locker rooms, man, it's gross. And it's like, well, who cares about what those women think? We're the men. We're going to take control. We're going to fight this war. We're going to fight this battle. We don't need those little, you know, and like, there's a toxic culture that arises there. And if that doesn't get under control, which it has never been in the West, it's never been in control. It's been out of control. It's a toxic, masculine, capitalist, racist, pro-slavery, oppressive, hierarchical, podcast broism for thousands of years. You know, it wasn't like that in a lot of other cultures. Like, I'm not saying nobody ever was like a perfect place, but like in Hawaiian culture too, I'm a native Hawaiian. We had women were made a lot of key decisions, and they were at least equal to the men in power. And there were times where there were toxic individuals and they had to be dealt with. Like it was usually a guy who would try to amass more wealth than he needed. There's actually a legend of the flying kalo in Hawaii. It's the chief of south end of Mokuokeawe, this island, decided that he wanted to accumulate more capital, or he wanted to accumulate more of the produce of the land than he deserved. And the kalo, that's in a Hawaiian culture, right? This is an ancient culture like Persian culture. The kalo are the elder brother. The taro, our staple food, is our elder brother. And so the taro actually leave the elders. They leave the male chiefs, the greedy male wannabe podcast bro, wannabe capitalist, wannabe Aristotle, wannabe Peter Thiel. They leave his patch because he's treating. It's a metaphor, because it's like if a chief was treating his, he's supposed to be steward of the land, not a tyrant, not a Western tyrant. So, but if he decides to try to take in more than he needs from his workers in the ahupua'a that he lives, right, the land division that he's on, then the story is that it's a duty for the people to basically go on a general strike and leave, and then call in support to correct the ali, or that's a Hawaiian word for chief, that's getting too big for his britches, that is starting to want to accumulate wealth, because you need wealth to accumulate. If you have additional resources, you can use that to pay your soldiers and to try to start exercising your power outside of the needs of the people, right? And so the Hawaiians knew that was something that could happen. So the story of the Flying Kalo is the Kalo leave, they go to the area of Ka'u, a neighboring region, and the ali'i there is not acting capitalistically. He's not acting in his own self-interest like most of the Hawaiian ali'i are. And when that happens, all the other surrounding areas come and they have to kind of basically, then they bring their warriors too. They say, you have to stop this accumulative unjust behavior, right? Stop trying to be a Greek, American, British capitalist podcast bro, right? Stop trying to have slaves like the Greeks, right? Because eventually that's what that ali'i was moving towards, right? Not feeding the people enough, right? Taking too much from the people. And he was going to start to use the power that he had gained, right? And use the military force that he had to oppress the workers, like the Greek Spartans would massacre their farmers that were right? They were Afro-Asiatic. But I mean, you don't need to have that component. You could just have serfs. But which would be massacred by the Europeans. So if you had an unjust leader that is starting to accumulate the wealth and the power using the threat of violent force upon his oppressed workers, the workers' duty in Hawaii was to leave that area, the maka'ainanas, the common people, and to call in the support of the fellow communist, collectivist, non-capitalist, not out of Pono. The Hawaiian chiefs that are still living by aloha. These are Hawaiian words to speak of the values that we have here. But anyway, long story short is what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of cultures around the world that have had like they all have had struggles with that tendency that human beings can, in general, and then particularly guys, if they get together and they get too much power and they get the wrong kind of ideas and they get into the wrong kind of life ways, culture, and economic and ideological cul-de-sacs or states, let's just say, and they grow and that expands, and other of them start thinking and then acting in that way, and they accumulate enough money and power and military force, right? As the Greeks, the Romans, the British, the French, American, etc. did, the Japanese, especially after in the late 1800s. Then you're gonna have gonna have a big problem in your society. You have a society where the history is written by it's not the history necessarily written by the winners in that sense, but it's like history is written by unjust, toxic dominators of their own people and of other nations. Right, and that's why why is it that we have all these problems in the Western history books? American books don't talk about all these wars we've been in, or we don't, right? Why do we, right? The news is written by, and because if you go to other places that don't have, like, there's always some amount of people stretching the truth, but you don't have complete brainwashing of societies. Because in order to keep an and when you get to the rate state of an empire, in order to keep the empire going, you need a constant conquest, or you need a constant, and it's always unstable, right? Because when you have it's why you always have to have huge police budgets in the United States, right? And in the West, right? There's always been a strong knight class to suppress the peasants for the history of European culture, and it was massacring peasants. It's even in The Witcher, right? It's like, I think the one of the monarchs comes back and it's like, I just had a great mass killing of the peasants. I just burninated the countryside and slayed a bunch of them, and now they're not going to rise up for a while, so I can keep doing conquest. I think it's even like a queen at that point. But that's not normal. That's not normal. You shouldn't have to be constantly policing, imprisoning, beating. And today it's police beatings, people asking for the basic needs and being told, no, you have to pay 50% of your income on rent, and you have to barely afford groceries, and then you're going to have to work harder and work grueling hours and die early, or the police will beat you, right? The knights will beat you, right? The Spartans will beat you. Our monopoly on violence against our own people, right? It's obviously any government has a certain amount of, they have enforcers, and they have somebody who enforces law and some kind of defense, right? But the West is unique in that the governments have monopolies on violence that enact on their own people mass violence to benefit a tiny minority of capitalist class, the aristocracy, kings, queen, etc., right? Your feudal lord, the Roman unjust Caesar class, they were filthy rich, right? And if you try to rise up against as a Roman farmer, or as somebody that you didn't provide enough denarius to, if you did not render enough to Caesar what Caesar wanted, then Caesar will come and massacre you and make an example of you, right? They might hang you up for hours on end by your hands, and with your hands stapled to a letter T made out of wood. It's called crucifixion, right? But that was a punishment for not providing enough revenue to the capitalist, imperialist Wall Street in Rome. If you did not provide, right? If you did not on a colonial scale and also on the local scale, right? So that constant mass violence against your people, against your colonies, even more so, because you can extract more from the fringes of the empire. But that's not normal. I mean, right? In a civilization, the civilization should have, there should be, if anyone breaks a law or anyone is unjust, they should be punished. Like the 14 Chinese billionaires that were recently executed, or one was just punished for, like, I think $17 million of bribes, sentenced to life. A politician, right? Corruption should be punished. people commit crimes, should not be allowed to do them freely. But the way the West uses the government and law enforcement, it doesn't really enforce laws, right? It just brutalizes the exploited workforces. And then in the modern post-World War II neoliberal and the neo-colonial system, right? It's a kind of semblance of human rights, freedom, and democracy. Not really in the United States and in the imperial metropole, but then you have a labor aristocracy that, and then as a whole, oppresses the global majority, 7.5 billion people. Because right, once you have a global imperial system, and then you have Eastern powers that are competing as systems, right? Then it's harder to just get away with what you used to get away with in the 1800s, right? Which is just mass plunder of everyone. Under capitalist, colonialist, British, American, French, etc., like that brutal colonial era. Anyway, I'm kind of off the topic a little bit, but coming back to it. So that whole narrative of the West as a leading light, the city on the hill, right? This kind of model for the world. Everyone should be like the United States, should be like the West, should be like Greece and Rome, and Britain and France. And these are the free countries. These are the human rights supporting countries. Who is supplying the live stream Holocaust, by the way? Right? Over the last 20 months, right? It's all the countries that are called the most free, the most pro-human rights, the best democracies, right? These are doing the worst possible crimes in the world. And everybody, so that's the shattering of the narrative of constructed over millennia, and certainly over the last 500 years of we are the human right, we are the civil, and you are the barbarian, right? The word barbarian, early on, that was Herodotus, and the Greeks of Herodotus' time were describing the barbarians were those in Persia. Was basically what it was. It was those east of us, those horrible barbarians that gave a jubilee and forgave all debt. Right? They didn't have oppressive mortgages. They didn't have a medical debt. They had super expensive MRI and cancer meds at the time. But they didn't have massive amounts of debt in their society accumulated, handed out by male oligarch, Greek, Roman, etc., capital accumulators who would then loan that, because if you have enough capital accumulation, it turns into that's the financial system. That's the bank. The banking structure is just the mass capital accumulation at the core of this unjust power. And so the debt in Persia was always forgiven every 50 years in Jubilee. Even the Western Christians still have memory of this. I think actually my dad, he's a very staunch Catholic, went to Jesuit Catholic priest training at one point at Gonzaga University. In fact, he's a very staunch Catholic, but he actually wrote a letter because he is basically a neo-feudal serf working under the Holy Roman Empire of the Catholic Church. He literally lives in a nearly condemned, falling apart Catholic priest seminary. It's a place where they train them. And even the Catholic Church has the memory of the Jubilee, right? But the West don't enact it. They don't actually enact it they never really fall. But they know there's this thing where every 50 years, right, we're supposed to, nowadays they have like a little cutesy little celebration. People go out and give each other, I don't know, Pokemon cards. Here, probably not. Here, Jubilee, we forgive our debts like we forgive our trespasses, because when you rewrite the Persian from we forgive our debts, or when you rewrite what actually the anti-capitalist, anti-banker sentiment, right, which was we forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors, right? That's actually what it's supposed to mean. And you retranslate it for the Westoid in the Western desired wording to forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Then it completely flips the meaning. Right now, we have to sanctify private property and capital accumulation. Right? When you say forgive our trespasses, so your crime was that you stepped onto my private property. You stepped onto my real estate. That's your crime, right? Whereas the original was we forgive our debts. What it actually meant was get rid of mortgages and private property, and we have to stop that because of mass capital accumulation, right? Which can be stopped by debt forgiveness. I mean, ask David Graeber and Michael Hudson and everyone else what they think about that. The handful of people speaking against this system. And Michael Hudson, he wrote about super imperialism. He actually go all the way back and talk about the differences between the Persian and Eastern economic structures versus the West and the Greeks, right? But you have to forgive the debts. But when you say forgive our trespasses, right? The crime is not the capital accumulation and the weaponization of debt. When you say forgive our trespasses, the crime is that you violated the capitalist. Your crime is that you went into that Walmart or that Target during the Floyd Rebellion and you were starving to death because of the terrible wages based upon mass police violence that you're paid working for Walmart, and you have to steal a can of pork and beans. So the violence is right. It's actually right. That's one way. That's one of the Empire of Glass. Right. Is the Westerners retranslating it into just that one word changes the whole meaning of that entire prayer that has been said by billions of people. Right. And that's just one example of infinite. But my dad wrote to the Catholic Church because he was unable to afford his own rent, working full-time with his wife, working full-time for 40 years. They worked till they were like 70 plus, right? Their whole entire life. Now they're broke. They're almost homeless, working for the Catholic Church. And my dad actually wrote, this is the year of Jubilee, because the Catholic Church raised his rent, living in this collapsing, falling apart former seminary. This is the year of Jubilee. Let us remember the words of our great Pope Francis. He was long 2-page letter to the sisters of the Sacred Hearts. Yes, and they said we should forgive. Forgive your lowly peasants. Basically, I don't know if he said that. He's like, forgive your lowly workers. We have worked for the Catholic Church for so long. We cannot afford this massive $500 increase of our rent. Please remember it's the year of Jubilee. But it's so there's this, anyway, what I'm saying is there's a memory of what that is in the West, but you can never do that because that would break the entire Empire of Glass. It would break the tentacles of control that are instilled into all people and all systems and all entities across the world through money, right? Through the monetary financial system and the world reserve currencies of the denarius of that time, or the United States dollar, with the Western financial complex of the ECB and the JCB, Japanese Central Bank, and the European Central Bank, that have together rigged the global financial system, and weaponized sanctions with a mass economic destruction and/or weapons of mass literal destruction through the military, and a combination of those two. But that if there was an actual for debt forgiveness, as the Persians, as they did, right, in their more matriarchal, more women controlling the finances, making sure the money is used for the continuation of the community and for the children and for the family, and not for personal aggrandizement and overproduction of military. Because women, it is we need defense, but we're not going to waste too much money on military endeavors, because what we need to do is we need to take care of our community, right? And you can look at society, who's successful, right? Who has a better balance of actual genders in the world. We can look at the Chinese, where they have spent about as much money as the U.S. has spent on war and imperialism and going across the earth and installing 800 military bases everywhere. And they have spent that on their own people. And what do we see? 800 million people lifted out of poverty, the greatest success story of people, the community, right? And as Mao said, women lift up half the sky. And there is far higher gender equality in China. That's just the fact. Also have your pride by that. If you are trans, they actually have guaranteed gender affirming care. All people have access to affordable healthcare. It's $1 for a doctor appointment. It's $15 for ultrasound. It's basically negligible. their food and their housing prices and their access to housing, their access to food is world class. And a lot of that is just they're not spending money on the aggrandizement of, they limit, and they said houses are for living and not for making money, right? The West says, if you trespass on one of my 15 Airbnbs that aren't even being stayed in, that's the greatest crime. And the police are going to beat you up. In China, there's a rule that says houses are for living and not for making money. And that is part of what, and they enforce it, and it actually is what has kept housing prices down, right? Because in the West complains that why is everything getting cheaper in China? The DeepSeek is 120 or 100 times cheaper than Western broken, malfunctioning, dysfunctional software they only use for making imperialist word salad, like Sam Altman's podcasts and garbage about why we need to invade another country, pumped out by this AI. And it's 20 times cheaper in China. Why is their food is so cheap? Why is Chinese food getting too cheap? Like, but again, that's the mentality is like, I think it was actually said by the government. They said, when food and your consumer goods and your houses get cheaper, that's good because then people live better lives. That's like literally what they said, right? And they're kind of confused. Like, why is there this talk in the Financial Times and the Economist and the Guardian and the BBC, which all operate on an imperial system coming from the DC, on one jukebox? Why do they have a problem with food and housing getting cheaper? Why do they have a problem with healthcare getting cheaper? Like, isn't that good for people? Is that good for people? Well, that assumes that you have a civilization that cares about its people, right? That assumes you have a society that is run by the people for the people and is actually democratic. If demos means the government, demos kratos, right? The power of the people, the masses, right? Then, but that assumes that the West is democratic. But again, that's another empire of glass. The West claims to be the fountain of democracy. It's the fountain of tyranny. It's the fountain of oligarchy. It's the fountain of oppression. But actually, in that sense, no, it's like that. Like the government is actually doing what the people want. The economy is doing what the people want. Even in Iran, right, which we're coming back to Iran, they have a lot of struggles because of so many sanctions. But still, the people in Iran, did you know actually women in Iran, despite the sanctions, Iran's people are still surviving. They have a harder life because of sanctions, but they still, they love their country. And on average, actually, the Iranians are, they have positive views of their government and their country despite the sanctions. Like 90+%. Even the more liberal, maybe people are talking about even the more liberal, slightly more Western, those are a little more pro-Western Iranians, including you can tell because Iranian women's often who are a little bit more liberal will they won't have the head coverings that the more traditional ones, or let's say like less Western, pro-Western Iranians are. But even they are saying we need the nuclear weapons. We need to fight the West with everything you have. To get the nuclear weapon, shut the Strait of Hormuz down, right? And they are united. They understand this is suffering. They have suffered in this war, but they're also and I just saw an Iranian woman who also didn't have hair coverage. She's like, we will eat dust. We will eat the dirt of our Iranian land before we let 1 ounce of our soil be taken by this Western enemy. And again, it's a 2,500 year enemy. They said they really, they are indigenous to that land. They have been there for millennia upon millennia. The United States wasn't even a twinkle in the eye of a descendant of a selfish podcast, bro. When Iran, right? U.S. wasn't even a twinkle in the eye of some 240 slave-owning child sexual abuser like Jefferson. When Iran already had centuries of great history, ups and downs, and great feats, great inventions in math and science, in poetry, you name it, in civilizational statecraft. The Chinese have recorded that over their history as well. They have been neighbors, and they have known each other for millennia upon millennia. And they're saying, we're not going to give up. And I mean, I hear that as a native Hawaiian. We've been here for centuries. But we Native Hawaiians have been in Hawaii for centuries and millennia before the United States was also a twinkle in the eye of a descendant of the Greeks and the Romans. Toga parties, the billionaire podcast bro class. We also don't want to give up, and like the Palestines, who also, like, we have been here for a long period of time. We have our history, we have our culture. Obviously, they have shown and they have paid in the blood of millions over the long term. It's hundreds of thousands, and certainly millions of people that have suffered to not be displaced from that land. And so the Iranian women were saying, I will eat the dirt. We will eat dust. I will starve. I will starve before I let any of these Western horrid peoples that we have watched our relatives in Lebanon. We watched our relatives in Palestine get genocide. Just, we are not going to allow any of those people 1 inch in here, right? And also, you have also remember the axis of resistance doesn't exist without Iran. Why do you think the U.S., NATO, UK at all? Why are the worst in the world, the imperialists, always talking about Iran? Because they know that it's not that Yemen and Lebanon and these are all just proxies. But they do work with Iran. They are allies that work together. They have autonomy, and Yemen actually took actions that even the Iranian IRGC was not. They didn't agree that they should do that at the time. But Iran they're not just a tool the way that many Western countries are just tools of the United States, European, Japanese, South Korean occupation, etc. But they do support, without their plans of the General Soleimani, who, let's remember, Trump had assassinated back in his first term. Did that stop Iran? No. Did the U.S. and the collective West and their pet settler colony learn from the lesson that you cannot win against legitimate anti-imperial justified resistance by attacking and taking out a few top leadership positions, right? They already did this in Nasrallah. They attacked Yahya Sinwar, or he's no longer alive because of them. They hit a bunch of the Iranian generals and nuclear scientists and the top political leaders. What did that do? What did that do? Speaking of domes, right? Because people are talking about, this, everybody lost this war and everybody just talk. I see some people saying that, and I'm like, I don't think that's a correct analysis. Iran wasn't smart. Why did they go into this? They should have not, been tricked by the West. Maybe they're a little bit too trusting. But another way to think about it is this: they said it was actually the Khamenei that said we should wait, and we should go through negotiations. A lot of the rest of the Iranian, because the Iranians have the parliament, they have Security Council, and have their kind of, the military leadership has to make decisions internally, and then there is actually more checks and balances. It takes a while to make decisions there, and then there's the Ayatollah Khamenei has to make these has a final, or has a veto. He has he can stop, or he has impact on that. But a lot of other decisions are already made in the parliament and through the Security Council, right? And it's actually a lot of the generals and a lot of the military leaders wanted to just start an attack, and they didn't want to do negotiations. They just wanted to take a more hard stance against the collective West and the little settler colony. And but the Khamenei said, no, we should wait. We should wait on this. We should wait on the True Promise 3, right? The attack. But the reason why it was but people don't realize it, right? It's just like, oh, well, Iran lost, or they did bad, or this is embarrassing because buildings were hit, some military sites were destroyed, air defenses were lost, but he actually had a good point, which is like, I think like later on, a lot of military leaders said actually that his decision was wise, because you have to, if you have a real long historical view, right? Some of the younger Iranians well, most the younger Iranians, right, under the age of 30. There's a professor that always comes on, Professor Marandi. He always gives very enlightening discussions. He fought twice against imperialists. He was hit by chemical weapons sent by the West, U.S. enriched through Saddam Hussein, and he fought on the side of Iran when Saddam was fighting for the United States and the imperialists from the West. And so he has the knowledge. The professor, he was a soldier in a direct, horrible war against his Iranian people, right? So he remembers that, but he's old. He's older now. The younger Iranians, they don't have that memory, right? They're starting, not all of them, but there's some of the younger, more liberal ones that are starting to listen. If you listen to the Empire of Glass, if you watch the screens of the glass, if you look at all of the Pepsi and Coke commercials and look at what can America give you with consumerism and capitalism, you can have 57 flavors of ice cream. Like you could have Miley Cyrus and you could have Taylor Swift concerts and Sophia Carpenter every day in your country. Don't you want to be free to be naked on? I mean, it's got like, if you think about it, it's like, how free are they in America though? I mean, right? But the West is very good at lying. Right, but we're the best place ever. You should be like America. We have lots of entertainment, and we have the best movies and shows, and I make entertainment, and I was living under the West, so they have lots of. I would question. There's a lot of people that are really into C dramas, K dramas, TV shows, and Black Myth Wukong. So I would question how long Western entertainment hegemony and this 1980s. Beating the Soviet Union with Coca-Cola, Levi's, jeans, and rock and roll, sex and drugs and rock and roll. I wonder how long that facade. I wonder how long that glass hologram is going to hold up of the great American freedom to be hedonistic and just have whatever you want whenever you want. And that's not to say like people shouldn't have nice things, but like this idea that in America you can have 56 jets, all the ice cream, all the trucks, all the cars, all the best clothes, and all the parties anytime you want at any time. They should tell the Chinese that, like, yeah, in America, every American goes on vacation 6 months a year, and every American has free healthcare, free housing. Every American gets a free mansion, and they just party and they have Disney shows. Like you get to like meet with Mark Hamill, and he recites Star Wars lines to you. Every American gets that, right? That's the Americans though. Wait, what? I don't take any vacation. What are you, 6 months? I have 6 months of the year I'm on vacation. What the hell are they telling the Chinese at the American embassy in China? But that's the glass, right? That's a narrative lie that they have to spin. And that's obviously the CIA carries out a lot of the operations. It makes a lot of decisions, but it's not just them. It's the whole entire system of the modern day Aristotelian toga party podcast bros that keep that going. They got to keep their party going. For them personally, their parties are more boring. You see the Elon Musk and Donald Trump's party. What did the food they're eating look really sad and boring? Like you get all this money to put on the most boring parties. Sophia Carpenter and Taylor Swift, man, their dancing ain't that good too. Like you gotta make Beyonce put on a blonde wig and make her as white as possible to I don't know what's going on over there, but it's like when the neoliberals when they brought in a lot of the global majority to do the entertainment, it was it was a little bit more entertaining, but this modern back to basics MAGA parties they're not quite as lit. Anyways, that's not really that important. But the where was it coming from? Yeah, so in Iran, the young didn't have the memory of this. They understand they're kind of having a hard time because of the sanctions, making it economically it's a bit harder. And some of them, like the Soviet Union, they're like thinking, what if we could have Baskin Robbins? What if we could have McDonald's? Or what if we could have more money and more things, access to more, just more wealth in general? Because we're having a hard time under these sanctions. So there's energy as part of there's some of the they're not a monolith. There's people that are like, maybe we should make deals. We should make, if we make a war, we could get more, we might get economically worse off. So maybe we should cut a deal with the United States, right? And this is a lot of, I think there's a lot of commentators, not even just in the West, but non-Iranian commentators that are just like, I don't think they're taking into consideration the civilizational dynamics and the generational dynamics, right? So Khamenei said, let's wait off, let's negotiate, right? Even maybe, Khamenei and a lot of the, maybe, they don't, it's not like they don't have spies. It's not like they don't have tapped into the Beidou Chinese satellite network that is running circles around the collective West, but and they could probably figure out, they can get their own intelligence about what the U.S. is planning to do. I mean, Pete Hegseth leaked their entire signal conversation out, right? Like the U.S. is like, oh yeah, we're gonna start this war, that war. Oh crap, wait, you Big Balls brought in his friend Big Dick into the group chat? What? Oh shit! All of the United States, DEFCON 4, all the Pentagon breathing is all over the WAPO and all over everybody's Discord. What the heck happened there? So it's not like, I don't think that Iran had no idea that the U.S. and their little settler colony and the West were lying. Right, about, as we know, that they were negotiating to buy time, and they were never serious about peace with Iran. But I think what the Khamenei's thought was, like what he said, what the general said later was, Khamenei said, we need to negotiate so that we can show to the world that we did a good faith negotiation, and we can see that the West, the U.S. and the West lied to us, right? And also, when we do the negotiation, we're going to be attacked, right? So let the young liberals or the old liberals, let our Iranian demographic that is siding with the West a little bit more, right? That want to bargain for these sanctions, right? Let them see the true face of the West, right? Let them bargain. Let them personally experience, right? Let the young personally experience. I thought we were going to get 57 flavors of ketchup. I thought we were going to get wealthier. I thought America, Europe, I thought we were going to have like Disney Iran. Well, I thought we were going to have Disneyland in Iran. But America, you betrayed us. Right? Think about the 17-year-old. Khamenei's like, think about the 17-year-old Iranians. Right? Think about those young 25-year-old, non-binary, like NB Iranians that are like watching, they're watching, Netflix TV shows, going like, oh man, look at how progressive America is. Wow, look at Acolyte. They got like a black indigenous woman, and they got the Asian boyfriend. And why don't we have, Star Wars Iranian movies? Maybe we partner with we partner with the West, and we stop with this, right? We stop with this, trying to stand our ground. Maybe we can cut a deal where Iran can get more funding and money and get more energy in, and more. We can build up more, and then we can have Iranian Disneyland too. We can all have, right? Just like the East, just like. Anyway, so it's kind of like, so now they negotiated, and then they seen, even though they tried to negotiate with the West has attacked them. The West dropped an apartment block in Tehran that killed 60 innocent people just to get to one figure. And all the Iranian slightly pro-Western Iranians are like, oh my God, I'm so betrayed, right? And then they're out in the street saying, the Iranian women who might have said, maybe the West isn't so bad, maybe we can make a deal with the West. She's out in the street saying, we need a nuclear weapon. We need the nuclear weapon. Death to who. We need a nuclear weapon. Shut the Strait of Hormuz. Khamenei, you keep saying you want to shut the Strait of Hormuz down. Shut the Strait of Hormuz down. Destroy the global economy. We must fight to the bitter end. There was a large chunk of the population that was already on that side in Iran. But now you got even more. All those people that were on the fence or leaning to the West, they are solidly on the unified as around the Iranian nation, around the Iranian history. They know that the West, now it's very important, there's a personal experience of Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and millennial Iranians. A personal experience of their own people being blown up and attacked in warfare. They have a personal experience of the West low down, disgusting betrayal. Right? They were told all these things. They watched their nuclear scientists talk about. They're doing their best to having the IAEA come in, right, to inspect their facilities. They're doing everything by above board. They're negotiating so hard, right, for so long, right, following the nuclear deal, even when the U.S. is pulling out of it earlier. And they're like, if we just try hard, we just try a little harder, then wait. And so now, so Khamenei has said, like, let's hold off and let's go. Let's because I think you could see that like some people were like maybe we should cut a deal. But if they had done True Promise earlier, then that visceral experience, right? Like it's even something like that. It's a little bit in Andor. It's like it's not great when the resistance doesn't action and then the empire cracks down. It's not necessarily it's people have suffered because of that, but it's also like when people see the true face of empire personally. Right, in a real visceral way. There's nothing like that. There's nothing that can turn you into an anti-imperialist, to rally to the side that you need to be on, which is against empire, when it reveals its true face, right? Because for a long time, if the Empire of Glass is allowed a long period where it is just right? It is just showing through its screens, right? It's showing through its newspapers. It's showing through its commercials. It's showing through its movies, right? It's showing through its university system, which it also controls. A lot of academia has been deeply pro-Western, the narratives, right? If you read Western books, if you watch Western shows, if you watch the West's Empire of Glass movies and TV, you listen to its narratives, you listen to its YouTube channels, you watch its media feeds, right? You watch its news, right? It can lull a generation, and this is what it always tries to do, is to lull generations and brings them into, it's been trying to do it in Taiwan a long time. Not too successful nowadays. All you got to do is one trip about, less than 100 miles across the a tiny little strait. You cross that, and the number one DPP separatist Taiwanese podcaster YouTube guy is like, oh my God, we got to get with China. China is our best friend. The day before that, he was like, we must fight China, and the Republic of China from Taiwan is the only legitimate government. We must stand strong, build up our military forces, and prepare to fight for independence of Taiwan. He crossed the strait, and then he's like completely flipped, right? So that's the Chinese strategy. The Chinese in the Eastern strategy is a little bit different, right? It's just kind of like people will see based upon our actions. The Chinese is the empire of steel and silk, right? It's like if you try to fight us, well, you will smash your head against the Great Wall of Steel and enjoy the great goods that we can make for you. For example, everything in your Walmart, basically everything you have, including your rare earths. Enjoy the silk, and if you fuck with us, then you won't have anything. They don't talk about how good they are most of the part. The West is the East is the empire of steel and silk. And Persia was also important, and the West, in a certain sense, is the empire of glass. Right, it's the empire of brainwashing. Right, it's about lying. It's about podcasting. Right, it's about YouTube. It's about long bloviated speeches about artificial general intelligence around the corner, and you have to give all the money and all the energy you have to Peter Thiel and Elon and all of our. That's the latest. That's the latest Aristotelian speech, right? If you give us all the money and power, then we'll be able to make a really good artificial general intelligence, or we won't do it, or we will, I don't know. And you give us, then we'll take that money, and you'll all be saved, right? And right, so it's the empire of half truths and lies called Western history books, Western academia, which is full of that stuff. It's based upon saying whatever is pro the global neo-imperial narrative, and if you ever say free PLSTINE, you get kicked out of the university system as a professor, everyone's getting fired now, right? It's like over the last year and a half, right? So it's being cleansed and purged of those who do not stand by the stormtrooper ranks of the literati, right? So that's the empire of glass, the empire of books, it's the empire of the glass books, the lie books, right? It's the empire of lies, right? And so Iran and Iran. Oh, by the way, there's just an order of I think about a dozen or more J-10C Chinese jet fighters that recently just destroyed and defeated 4.5 generation French Rafale. So and the latest so the Western Air Force is now, its air superiority that it was partially relying on is cooked. So good luck with that. And also you have unhackable Beidou Chinese satellite networks that are helping to target, along with the Huawei phones that they're now broadcasting from. Actually, there's an Iranian leader that said, throw away your American phone, throw away your Western phone. That's the number one way they're surveilling us. That's how they know our location, right? Which is also true, by the way. And that's the empire. It's the empire of exploding Motorola bombs. It's the empire of mass surveillance. It's the empire of techno-feudal, Palantir, evil crystal ball wielding creeps. All right, it's the empire of glass balls. Not just big balls. His balls are also made of glass. You just kick it a little bit too hard in the wrong part, he starts vomiting up all the MAGA hats he ate. But also there's an empire of mass surveillance, which, and there also is being defeated by Huawei. Harmony OS is being rolled out to billions of people, and CrowdStrike shattered not just the Las Vegas glass dome that had a giant 404 blue screen of death on it because it was running a Windows operating system with CrowdStrike computer security, which also ran the Russiagate story, by the way. That's same people. The Chinese hacker Russiagate, North Korean subterfuge of all our computer systems is CrowdStrike. Anyway, so people are exiting the Western hardware, software, satellite networks, high-speed internet networks, telecommunications as a whole. Starlink is just one part of that, and moving into non-Western Chinese satellite networks, the Beidou network, Chinese Huawei, Chinese Douyin. I mean, without TikTok, important fact, without the Chinese Mate 50 phone that could broadcast with a satellite, you could broadcast to satellites, Chinese satellites, non-Western satellites, completely bypassing the ability to shut down their communications, which the West always does to control. That's the matrix of control in a digital telecommunication sense. And so the Palestinians had the Huawei Mate 60 that was intentionally made to broadcast through 30 feet of concrete, so you could do it from underground, right? When you jump up, blow up a Merkava tank, right, in occupied GAZA. And then you can take a video of all of this GENOC IDE, these horrors that are happening, and you could do it in an un-Western controlled way with a Chinese non-Western phone. You have no CIA backdoors. There's no Edward Snowden PRISM or other NSA, U.S. corporation, Western government, Mossad, etc. Compromisation, and you could use that Chinese phone with your video, send it through to a non-Western aligned neighboring country, or straight to a Chinese satellite, and broadcast that through non-Western Chinese controlled Douyin, TikTok, which algorithm they did not control, and that's why we've had the ability to see 20 straight months of live stream Holocaust and the actual truth, right? So it was actually the in that sense, right? It is an empire of, it's a Silk Road, it's a silk and steel road of truth that is shattering the empire of glass, right? In both narratives, in the 2,000-year narrative of the West is the great moral, European Western countries are the moral, democratic, human rights, freedom. We can see that they're not. Everyone can see that they're not over the last 20 months of live streamed PLSTINE war crimes. Right? You can see the whole narrative is. Even the soft power of the West used to dominate, right? That brainwashing, that is completely, the whole world is rapidly, even inside Western countries, rapidly shifting against, right? You look at 2019, or you look at, pre-20, August 7, 2023, and then you look at after that, and you have 20-30% percentage shifts or more, especially in the Arab world, in the global South, in Africa, Asia, Latin America, just massive anti-West, the settler colony, anti-U.S. sentiments, and even against their own governments in those countries, right? But a lot of that is actually due to the computer technological advancement of a non-Western anti-Western imperial civilization state, like Iran, which is China is. It's a 3,005. Iran is about 2,500. China is about 3,500-year-old civilization state that has different ways and has a communist party and a system of doing things, and they have their own. Now they have their own alternate communications networks. They have their own alternate hardware or software and technological ecosystems. They can make anything. It's science fiction compared to the West at this point, and to the U.S. And also they control the rare earths, right? So that's another the empire of lithium, the empire of volcanic glass, the empire of mineral control under a global imperial system, backed by stormtroopers, backed by Roman centurions, but now backed by the threat of military intervention, backed by the threat of sanctions, coups, color revolutions, etc., to get all of Bolivia's lithium, to get all of the coltan, the cobalt, any mineral under the feet of a Sudanese person, a child in Congo, right? And that, right? But even that has been broken by the East now, right? Because Chinese mine 60% of the rare earths, but over 90% and 95+% of the critical molybdenum, the neodymium, all the critical rare earths, these absolutely essential minerals that are needed for the most advanced military systems, radar, satellite, missiles, any kind of jet fighter, anything that you want to fight modern conflict. The weapons that you need for your imperial army, right? What you're going to need to use to do your genocide and your massacres, to brutalize, right? Again, just as the Spartans brutalized their slaves, if you want to brutalize your global neo-colonial slaves, today you need those rare earths. It's like the Spartans don't have any swords anymore. They're running out of minerals for their swords to brutalize the oppressed global 8 billion person masses, working a way to make the billions and trillions of profits in Wall Street, in Brussels, in London, in Tel Aviv. How's your financial towers doing, by the way, in Tel Aviv? It doesn't look. It looks a little shattered. You gotta watch out. There's some bits of sharp crystal down on the floor there. You gotta watch out. Maybe don't use so much glass next time. You know, in case a Mach 16 hypersonic Iranian missile hits you, you might want to use less glass. You know what I'm saying? Because it could be dangerous. It's kind of a fall hazard. Any pedestrians on the sidewalk, it's just a little bit dangerous because, you know, 1/3 of your entire major city has been destroyed or damaged, and it's estimated. I've seen estimates of $5 to $20+ billions of dollars in damage. So U.S. taxpayers, I guess, hey, U.S. taxpayers, there went your cheaper beef, and there went your housing and healthcare. There went all of your frack water and lead-filled pipes that needed to be replaced. It's all going to pay for new glass in your GNOCIDAL settler colony. All right. So anyway, but long story short, the myth, the glass house of absolute escalatory, absolute military dominance, right? This TERROR reign, right, from the little Western settler colony, right? The little Thermopylae, that's what the West would call it. The little, you know, your little Leonidas Yahoo, right? Using a Zack Snyder reference, right? It's the myth that it can withstand, right? Because the Thermopylae in that West versus East, Greece versus Persia narrative, right? Is this this tiny bastion of freedom and democracy and human rights called Greece? The Spartans, we the great Spartans, right? Who definitely didn't have 7 slaves and massacred them and threw disabled babies into giant piles. Actually, that's on screen. Never mind. Apparently, that's okay. It's okay to celebrate mass eugenics. It's weird, right? It's okay, mass eugenics and slavery and treating women like just mindless, lobotomized, or, you know, should be lobotomized baby producers. That's normal. That was in Zack Snyder's movie. It's interesting what he thinks about that. Anyways, this tiny amount of Western military might will resist all the evil that the evil Eastern Persians and the Iranians and all of these, they have different people. There's different people, right? That's actually part of they've got these or Asian types. There's different religions. Oh, they have all. Some of them might even be gay. Oh my God! Like, there's Muslims and there's dark ones. Some of them wear these different kind of head wraps, and they have differences, right? But we're the free people that have no differences. And if you're different, we'll kill you or oppress you. We oppress women. We enslave and massacre our racialized workers. And we all have to fall in line and just keep on massacring and taking everyone's resources. So, but we're the free people, right? I mean, it's like whatever happened in the Greek mind that was able to make that intellectual acrobatics work. You know, those podcast bros, those toga wearing Greco podcast bros, man, when they figured out that intellectual acrobatics, man, you know, that makes Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, and Peter Thiel smile. Like, wow, you guys you really did it there. You know, it makes Tony Blinken. We're the human rights rules-based order, and we're gonna have to blow up all those countries. But it's very similar, right? It's kind of like, how are you even saying those words? You said that in one sentence. We are the greatest human rights and freedom and peace. We're the country of peace. Even Trump or the Democrats or Republicans. We are the country of peace. By the way, we're going to do straight up war. We're just going to start a war. But we're the peace country. I'm just going to take my B-2 bomber and drop a bunch of 30,000-pound hunks of tungsten badly and unsuccessfully. But I'm going to literally start bombing your country unprovoked. But I'm the man of peace. Only in the West can you say this kind of things and anybody not look at you askance like this and walk off diagonally and like what is wrong with you? Why would you do the second thing? Why would you do war? Why would you do crimes against humanity? And how can you say you're the best, you're of peace, you're moral, and then say you're going to do crime against the most horrible thing possible, right? It's kind of like it's baffling. Like, how does the Western mind work? You know, I've been raised under illegal U.S. occupation for years of my life. I still can't fully say how exactly it works. I know I know what's happening there, right? But it's really weird when you think about it. It's like, how can you say that, and how can people still follow you? Because people follow Democrats and Republicans. If they follow Trump, people still do. Millions of them. Some of them are like, I don't know. I'll follow another person that's a mass liar and also does horrible, horrible things, right? Because there are no leadership in the West that isn't that. But you know, so it's like, how does that work? But anyway, that's beyond the scope of this. But you know, like, so the myth that or that glass house, the glass shield, the paper tiger, right? That, oh, we are invincible. Nothing can touch us, right? And so Lebanon, Egypt, all of you, prepare for greater isn't real. Prepare for the greater expansion of the Western settler colony because anything we do, you know, we'll hit you back 1,000,000 times harder. We might nuke you. And now it's like, and Iran has called it bluff, and it's just like, well, you're not that strong. We blew up a third of your entire. I know it's not being broadcast in Western media, but again, that's the Empire of Glass. So if you're saying Silver Spook, everything you're saying, I don't see any evidence of that in my media feed, in my TV, my glass, my Google Glass is not telling me the information that you're telling me. Well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, get on Shahong's too. I mean, like, I don't know what to say. Get out of the Western. Have some access to something outside the West. Because you're in the Matrix, you know, like Neo, with his his brain plugged in. You're a little battery, right, powering an imperial machine that's sucking your lifeblood, sucking your healthcare, housing, and food money. That's for sure. I don't know if you looked at the price. I look at the price of the broccoli in your stores nearby. You know, I mean, you look at the price of the housing. You know, you look at the price of your cancer medication, right? So I mean, it's the Empire of Glass. It's charging you thousands of dollars a month for basic existence. That's also telling you that, oh, the little settler colony is doing fine. It's not doing fine. Yeah, so that's the last. That's the, and obviously, that defense dome is falling apart and it's not functional. They're not even intercepting like one. I forget what it was, but they were not intercepting like even like 10% in the last few volleys from Iran. And not just the settler colony, the U.S. Western aircraft carriers, even the French are also complicit in this. Were shooting down trying to shoot down Iran's drones and missiles. Jordan, all the Gulf trader governments, and any of the ones in the region. There are huge numbers of them. Were all trying to help, do everything they could, allowing Germans were sending planes to refuel. The GNOCIDAL planes that were flying to blow up more apartment blocks. So Germany, all of NATO, all of the European governments complicit in that. I saw that I think Spain and Italy Spain is, like there are elements obviously all over the West that are not happy with this and they abhor this and they want to try to get out of that. That's why there's so many protests still, even despite the non-free West that is literally silencing people, just arresting them for just saying, let's stop doing the worst crimes against humanity, right? That's anyway, whatever freedom you thought you have. The fact that anybody could still, the fact that you can still say that the West is free, people still believe that it's democratic. It's just, right? That it's already like people outside the West look at that and they're like, how can you even believe that? Can you not see people being brutalized? Like, people are just like being deported in the United States, even full U.S. citizens, just because of what they look like, right? People are like people are like doing what they say, oh, China is not free because you can't make, like, not even funny, like just kind of gross, racist Winnie the Pooh jokes about Xi Jinping. None of that was ever true. That's also the Empire of Glass thing. But in the United States, if you have a meme, if you are a Scandinavian citizen and you have a meme that just kind of, at the expense of, the vice president of the United States, you get deported, right? It's just like, so, I mean, it's literally what they accuse the West of, accused China of doing. They are doing that. You can't make fun of our leadership, or we'll put you in a detention facility, punish you, right? Anyway, every projection is a confession. That's part of the glass. That's the empire of mirror. Whatever I do bounces off this mirror and it sticks on everybody I don't like. Everything that I accuse our enemies of is actually just me looking at my reflection and then talking, right? Oh my gosh, you're committing X and Y and Z, GENOCID. Oh my gosh, how could you ever insert IUDs into the little children in the Xinjiang? Never mind, that's actually what Canada has been doing for a long time, inserting IUDs, forced birth control unknowingly into 9-year-old Indigenous girls in Canada. Against their will, by the way. Oh my gosh, what are you doing in? You're violating the human rights in. Your children are not eating in Iran. I mean, you are forcefully starving to death the children in Gaza. Like, we're watching that live, and then not only you're starving them to death, it doesn't happen fast enough. So you have your soldiers are out there just like live, fully automatic machine gunning the children. And you're talking about, oh, somebody could starve in Iran after sanctions that you caused, that you put in place, because they stood up for their own people and their sovereignty. And you want to starve them to death. You failed, but you can starve the collective West. You all starve these little children because all your governments, and your settler colony. And you're going to say, oh, it's we have to worry about the hunger in Cuba, in Iran, in Venezuela. Well, if you take all of your sanctions off that you're putting on them because they are trying to not be a part of this abominable, atrocious, blood of children covered empire system. It's not just the U.S., it's all the countries and all the entities that work with it are bathed in the blood of the children. And these countries like Cuba and Iran, etc., and these that are resisting are saying we're not going to be part of that, you know. And so, you know, and now, thankfully, to end this, the empire of glass is being shattered, in that the empire of the world can see that Iran has been standing on the side, the glass charade, that the mirage that Iran is beyond the bounds. They're the most immoral country, the sponsor of all these horrible T word, you know, oh my gosh, TERROR word, not the other. The sponsor of, you know, they're just violating, they're anti-Semitic, they're harming all these human rights everywhere. And now everybody can see, like, they're the ones that have suffered for a long time to support them in Yemen is the only two countries that are directly, as a country, as a military, directly intervening on behalf of PALSTINE. And we saw Westerners like, you didn't do enough, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And also we have to overthrow you. It's just again, that the fact that you can say, Iran, you didn't intervene enough to stop the genocide that my people are conducting. And also, these same people, these certain issues like liberal or Western liberal types, but you know, it's all kind, you know. But we also have to overthrow you and install what? Install what? Install the government that your genocide, your war crime committing country, wants to help its settler colony keep committing infinite and more war crime. You know, like there is this kind of like recursive funhouse spirit. It's like an infinite, you know, it's like a chimera wrapped within a hologram, wrapped within a, you know, like a funhouse mirror. It's just like an infinite refraction of like nonsense, you know, in the mind. And the Western mind is going to keep, as the glass shatters, and there are going to be a myriad series of broken narratives that are going out. Today I'm making peace. Tomorrow, no, I'm the war president. I'm making peace. I'm blowing you up, but I'm also making peace. Okay, now that I've bombed you, let's make peace. Right? This nonsense. Right? The West is trying to spin narratives to make it make sense. China is solving climate change at what cost? I thought we want to fight climate change. Yes, but also not if it's Chinese solar panels. What do you have against the Chinese solar panel? What is so bad about making a lot of green technology and moving us to, I thought you wanted renewable energy. Well, we want renewable energy, but only when we can just kind of talk about it and make a lot of money and still use a lot of fossil fuel because we need that, because it's hard to control the sun. And what we want to do is control everyone by controlling the primary inputs for all of economic activity, which is energy. So we just want to talk about solar and never do it. What's up? We're the West, and we're COP26, and we're all the green parties and the Western environmentalist organizations to a large extent. Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, either you want renewable energy because it's good for the planet and it makes us more sustainable and more resilient, or you don't, right? So that narrative is breaking. So that empire glass is shattering, right? They don't want to talk about the breakthroughs in quantum, in very high quality software, not AI. I don't want to use that word anymore because that itself is an empire of science fictional refractions of broken HAL 9000 and Wall-E anime eyes, depending on if you think that AI is going to save or destroy us all. So that's its own. I'm a science fiction writer, and I'm like, I don't want to look at that shattered pile of screwed up glass narratives turned into neural weapons to empower NVIDIA and OpenAI and Grok and Meta stonk prices. And also their own control by keeping their mass surveillance, by stopping people from talking to each other and talking to ChatGPT to ask about everything, including how to be treating chatbots as their therapist, counselor, girlfriend, boyfriend, parent, teacher, and also literally their entire brain. People are statistically, empirically losing the ability to critically think, and remember their own essays or just have thoughts in general, illiterate, and becoming innumerate as well. So so that's a whole other mess, and there's no so that AI discussion is also right. It's a fractured diamond. It's a fractured mirror with all these different stories moving in 6 directions at once. Today we're creating AGI. We won't create AGI if you give us $2 billion of investment. It's, what is that? What does that mean? That's like you're trying to make a BS argument and then you made another one halfway through that. Like we're gonna make AGI, but okay, maybe it's bad though. Peter Thiel was like on a podcast, bro, thing today saying like, Oh yeah, I guess I am kind of like Palantir, and I'm kind of like a horrible super villain in like a comic book. Like Lex Luthor, but it's not. But if you give me billions, I won't be that bad. And I was like, what the hell was that? What did you just say? Like, what are you even saying right now? Like, so all the Toga Party Greco podcast bros are tripping and walking barefoot like Bruce Willis over their own glass shards of the broken narratives, and it's hilarious. That's the end. I should wrap this up now because it's already almost 2. If you would like to support us, ko-fi.com/silverspook, and for direct support, it massively appreciated. And you can also help us out at patreon.com/Neofeud. And if you want really like to help us out and give us ongoing support, patreon.com/Neofeud. We can use all the support we can get because it is it's hard to keep doing this work without the as soon as we get Jubilee, we're happy to do more of this without worrying about money, but we do now because we have to keep the lights on in the space that we're in. It helps us do anti-imperialist discussions from a native line, a left perspective, restoring ecology here in the Silverspook cooperative, Silverspook cooperative, and also of course finishing cyberpunk retro left-leaning adventure games like a Neofeud 2, which I'm almost done with. Neofeud 1 is on sale right now. Happy Steam sale, everybody. So if you haven't, don't forget to go and check out Neofeud on the Steam website. If you like retro cyberpunk games, if you appreciate the kind of discussions that I have on these streams, the games are kind of like interactive versions of those in some ways. In a classic adventure games like Monkey Island and Space Quest. And Neofeud is on sale right now. So do grab it if you can. Grab it for your friends. Put it in your friends' family, your neighbors, your dog's Steam library. If your dog is that advanced, kudos to your dog. But anyway, so Neofeud is on sale to July 10th. And of course, every sale does go to help us keep doing this work at the Silverspook Cooperative. And also, of course, you can... and also at patreon.com/Neofeud, if you give us support, you can also get access to the Silverspook Discord and the Silverspook University, which is over 1,000 hours of all the content that we have produced at this YouTube channel and elsewhere, as well as the threads and such, categorized according to topics. And you can also support us at the itch.io store, which is where you can also get Neofeud and other games like Decolonators, Aegis Star, Pigeon with Gun, and Woman, which is a book by Holly, who's raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christian culture, a certain flavor of this Western culture, run by guys more like the Jordan P. Peterson types talking to each other about how awesome they are and how we need to keep the system going. And it critiques that system of right-wing evangelical Christianity in the story of Mary in the Bible from Mary's perspective. And also, I just want to say I had a good conversation with I had my first live remote Discord call based directing session with the non-compete Luna and American Johnson, if you know who that is. They're left content creators, and I had a good I did a first live directing, like I was the director directing Neofeud 2 voice acting from American Johnson, and I'm gonna do another one with Luna soon. But yeah, so shout out to non-compete. Thanks for voice acting in Neofeud 2. It was fun. It's kind of like playing a tabletop role playing game, but I'm the GM. I'm like, okay, this is the scene. This is what happens. Okay, now you play out this role. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. EJ had to channel his inner Luke Skywalker. Okay, anyway, that's just random asides. Let's wrap this up. You can also help follow at Silverspook Games. If you want to, I haven't been posting too much there, but I would just get on there. I haven't been posting. I got too many social media sites. It's part of my problem. But you can follow at Silverspook Guy on Red Note, aka Shahong Shu. If you find, just look for Silverspook there, and you can find my posts over there. If you still, I think obviously I can still access it here, so maybe you can too. I think Texas banned it. You can also follow on Blue Sky and all over the place, but we're on Blue Sky at Silverspook Games. At not that. Oh, what the hell is that? Wait. You can follow at Silverspook Games at bsky.social or at silverspookguy.bsky.social. And you can also follow on Mastodon. On Mastodon at Silverspook Games at mastodon.social and or at Silverspook Games at wandering.shop. And also on Twitter, obviously you can follow. On Twitter, you can follow Silverspook Guy and or Silverspook Games for the personal and for the games related stuff. And yeah, you can also follow at Allergic to Blue. That's Holly, married to myself, parent of two with myself, and always sharing important information around, and our great moderator here. So yeah, thank you Patreon patrons for your ongoing support. Without your support, it's hard to keep this going. So thanks to everybody on the list. Somebody just became a Patreon patron. Actually, let me just quickly add that before I forget, because I probably might. Weaveler. Thanks a lot to Weaveler. So thanks a lot to Weaveler for becoming a Patreon patron. Until next time. Keep your marriage shades posh. Be excellent to each other. Keep your glass see through the glass. Don't see through the glass darkly. Through the clouded glaze of the Western lies, narrative, historical, technological, this literal glass screens controlled by Microsoft, Google, Samsung, Apple, etc. And also the glass domes that they have militarily are much more fragile, and economically and in a strategic geopolitical way are much more fragile than they claim. So yeah, keep that glass cracking, I suppose. Take it easy.